I'm here today with Jaime Diglio. Jaime is founder and CEO of In First Consulting. It's a high performance coaching and training for leaders. She's been doing that for quite some time. And Jaime, I've known you for a little while. I love all your work and have participated in some of your workshops. So welcome and so glad to be here to talk about your new book.
Thanks, Lori. I'm so excited to be here with you too.
Yeah, this is great. And Jamie's new book is called Moneyball Leadership: Win the Game by Changing the Way You Lead. So this is so interesting. There it is. It looks like that. And it's available. We'll give shout outs to where you can get it, but I want to talk about it because I found it to be very helpful. First of all, it's not like my book, it's not super thick and you can literally read it in one or two sittings. I find that I can tell within the first 10 minutes or so, maybe a little, let's give it a half hour. When I do read a lot of books, and if it doesn't keep my attention, it could just take forever for me to read. But I actually read this online. I read the Kindle version and I just flipped page after page, and you have some activities and different things that engaged me. And I took an assessment and all sorts of things, and I was done in one sitting. So congratulations on that. I think it's great for leaders that we can find something that we can actually read in a shorter amount of time than some of the big books out there.
Yeah, that was intentional because I wanted to write something that I would read and that I can throw in my bag. That
Yeah.
really it's just I can take it with me and it's in a quick sitting. So yeah, it's definitely like maybe a 90-minute to under 2-hour read.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Airplane flight is another good time to read a book like that.
Yes.
You were on our Conversations with Women in Sales podcast, episode 111, quite some time ago. So it's great to be on another episode. We're going to turn this into a couple of different pieces of content, and this will be on the Score More Sales site as well as Women Sales Pros, because this book is for everyone. It's for leaders and it's for people that want to be leaders. And what I love about it is that you talk about your Moneyball leadership blueprint, which I'm going to ask you a little bit about, and the premise that to learn to speak so people will listen, right?
Yeah.
It,
Yes.
it made me think about my sales manager. I had 23 sales managers in my sales career, and many of them did not do that. They were
Right.
not competent in that area. So I'd love to, we'll touch on that. And then the other thing is you talk about understanding yourself, understanding others, finding your winning formula and entering the win room, and then mastering the new ROI. And you also have a sports analogy for that, like step up to the plate, scout the team, find your pitch, in practice in the bullpen, and then hit home runs. And I love both approaches because it makes it easier when I can see a picture in my head of what you're talking about. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came about thinking about war rooms and win rooms?
Sure. The war room, win room concept really came from my own personal journey in sales and as a sales leader. And I did a TED talk about it last year of my journey from the war room to the win room. And I'll just explain it really quickly is that the war room was if we think about it, is we always have two rooms in our head all the time. And on one side, we have what I call our war room. It's where we work against results. It's where we doubt ourselves. It's where we focus on our weaknesses. It's all the things we're not doing well. We are very good as human beings. We're wired to live in that war room. And when we're in our war room, we're losing money, time, energy, resources, right? Because we're spending time on things that either have already happened or we're spending a lot of time there. And so the other room is our win room. And our win room is where we focus on what I need. It's where we focus on our values. We're clear in our motivations, our the direct drivers, the direction we're going. And my story was that I was really stuck in the war room, comparing myself, lots of head trash, comparing myself to everyone else and minimizing what my winning formula was. And what I found over time was that, and I see this in organizations, is what we do is we have a very one size fits all approach to how we lead people, how we train people. And what happens is, because then if you try to make everybody the same, you're basically like making everyone average, and you're minimizing the things that, like, that winning, that my money ball, that winning formula, that 20% that is the thing that makes you different, makes you unique. And we're burying it with all this other stuff. So concept is, right, how do we get out of the war room? And when we can remove that 80%, we can focus on the 20% in the win room, and we're clear in the direction we're going in. And so that it really came from my journey of figuring out being stuck in that war room and how to pull myself out of it. And that's what I do today with the leaders and the teams that I work with. It's really helping people to see their potential and measuring what matters, right? What is the thing that is going to make that person achieve peak performance? And when they're in the win room, when we go through the steps, they're there, right? We literally get them from where they're playing average to up here. And it's all through just the steps that we take in the program.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. When I was in your workshop, it was last year, right around this time.
And
And I remember one of the things that I remember was the reference to head trash in the war room. That's where we have all that doubt and comparing ourselves to others. I noticed when I went to SaaStr this year, I was in and around some very successful people and their beautiful properties and homes and accomplishments and companies they've sold and all sorts of things. And it made for a few minutes. It's, oh wow, what did I miss out on? And then you regroup. And I know you have a whole process to do that. But at some point I ended up going into the win rooms on it and thinking I'm at the best place for me. And it's I've worked hard to get to where I am, and it's all good. And I don't need to compare myself to others, but it's easy to do, right? It's so easy
well,
to do that.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because we also live in a society, and this is what I talked about. I talk about in the book, I talked about in my TED talk, is that I was at a point where I was very successful. I am very successful, but I was drowning on the inside. Like I present spent it's like you spend so much effort trying to present a certain way. And if we just took a small amount of what we invested on to make ourselves look a certain way and actually invest in how do we actually be a certain way, right? Personal development, really getting clear. We wouldn't have to spend all that time and energy on stuff that we think we're supposed to. But this is what a lot of people presenting a certain way. I call it the highlight reel, not the real reel. So you're seeing a version that person has spent a lot of time and money and effort to make look a certain way.
Yeah.
But wait for real success, right? To what do you need? This is why so many people who show success are not happy in their life because they, right? They're following someone else's vision or this playbook that they think they're supposed to follow. And then they eventually wake up and go, wait a minute, this is my life.
Yeah. And you can buy success and happiness with money. You can't just get your promotions and feel it all. It has to be from within. And that's what I like one of the things you said, that leadership isn't about what you do at work, but it's about who you are. So it's your whole self, right?
Yeah.
And that's different. And the managers and leaders that I had in my career, where they showed up and were transparent and were open and honest, those were my favorite leaders. Those were the best ones. We're all flawed human beings to one extent or another. And they were willing to say, I don't have all the answers, but here's what we're going to try. Here's what we're going to do. And then I can think of one of my most favorite managers I worked for when I was a salesperson. His name was Al Martin, and he came from IBM. And he would work right with us. He would do the same work we had to do, where other managers would not do that. They'd sit in their corner office and just bark at people to do things. But he made a big impression on me as someone who actually, did what we had to do. And he wasn't above anything that he asked us to do.
I do talk about this in the book is that the way that many leaders are leading today, they were taught by the leaders they had. And the reality is that the way that they were taught was effective maybe back then. It is no longer effective in the way when you basically spend your focus on everything a person's doing wrong. You can't, by focusing on what someone's doing wrong, you are not going to then get the outcome of the win from focusing on what's wrong. So this is like behavioral science 101. But the challenge is most leaders they don't know this. They've been taught a certain way. So in many ways, I'm like, it's not really their fault. Like they've been taught to put fear and control. And you're seeing so much of that. And what I'm aiming to do with this book is to help leaders see that actually that way of leading is losing them money every moment of the day because you're not leading if people aren't listening. So every interaction you're having, if your people aren't listening to you, you technically aren't leading.
Yeah.
And so so if you think about time as money, how do we make sure that when you communicate, people are hearing you?
And you also you talked about if you're not paying attention, you'll become a robot that is so predictable that people just roll their eyes when you talk. And I remember a manager that I had like that, where we would sit in a sales meeting and count how many times he said, quite frankly, because he said it in hundreds of times in the course of an hour sales meeting. And we would keep a tally. We were not listening to what he was talking about. We were just keeping a tally. And so you can't be your best self. You can't be in high regard when you're doing things like that. And he never really addressed.
Yeah. And I think that the key around this too is that most leaders have never really done the work to understand how to articulate what they value, what they believe in, right? Like their philosophy. It's very much a standard, everyone's the same. And I talk with a lot of leaders who are like, we're trying to build trust and we want to build trust with our teams and we want our leaders to grow their skills. And you can't do that if you haven't done the self work, right? That's why the first step in the programs is always about it's like self data, right? How are you gathering data on self? And once you can identify that and own it, like your unique data set, then you can use it more powerfully in how you're leading more clearly. But if you're a certain way, but you're trying to pretend you're a different way, it's misaligned. And that's why people don't trust you. Because you're not showing up as who you are. You're showing up as, again, or like a robot. And when we talk about, I always say every conversation is a sales conversation. And so when you're a leader and you're trying to get your team to perform, you're missing the mark because they're just not listening. And so they have to understand that and be like, what do you mean they're not listening? I'm talking. They should be listening. I demand that they listen. And I'm like, how do you know they're listening? How can you lead other people if you don't even know how to lead yourself?
And that's a really good lesson within the book. What I wonder is, could someone read the book and go from the war room to the win room, do you think? Or do they need coaches help a lot? Do you have some suggestions for what people can do after they read the book?
Yeah, the book is not a how-to book. It's a who do you want to become book. And some people have given me feedback because again, this is people read books and they don't know what. So I've gotten all kinds of feedback about it and surprise about what they were expecting and what I can give you the framework of what to think about and who do you want to become so it's like awareness first. Awareness is the first step. If you're completely unaware and you're like, this isn't my thing, like it doesn't matter. So nothing's going to change because you're not even aware that you're in the war room or how you're leading is losing you money. It's everybody else's problem. So awareness and then acceptance, right? That's the next step, right? Acceptance of, okay, this is where I am and the decisions I've made to date or have got me to where I am. And okay, I want to make a change. And so how do I do that? How do I take responsibility for, okay, I want to make a change in my leadership legacy, how people listen to me. But the thing about it, so the steps are all there and you can think about that and try to do it yourself. I can't give the exact way to do it because each person who's reading it is different. And so each person has their own strengths, their own values, their own goals. Each person's win room goal of their peak performance is different.
But they could talk to someone like you as a coach, or you also come in and do workshops for
It's
companies.
absolutely. So it's really an introduction to my methodology, why it works. It works because it's different than most training. Because it takes it. I would say most training is like the standard, like this is how you do it, and how we approach it is we're not competing with any other existing training, leadership training, or sales training. What we're doing is we're amplifying, we're taking it to the next level because we're taking all the foundation of what that person has learned, and then we're making it custom for them through just some different techniques that we teach in the practices. And it's about practicing it over time. So that's the coaching. And again, it's the coaching and it's the practicing real scenarios. And then they often are like, oh my God, this works. I'm like,
Yeah.
I know if you do it.
Right.
But it's a completely different way to think about your thinking when it comes to leading people, to selling, because it's not, we're taught to we're taught to speak it or pitch it or whatever a certain way. But what
Yeah.
we don't think about is that it's what people hear. When we talk about measuring what matters, it's not what you say, it's what people hear. And
Yeah.
we know that statistically, we tend to really only think and communicate in a way that only 25% of people think and communicate. Any assessment you've ever done, right? We sit in a quadrant, and this is what I teach in the programs, is we sit in a certain quadrant of like how we communicate. And what we forget is that if we don't understand, if we're not self-aware, we're if we're not self-aware and we don't understand how the other people think differently than us, we pretty much are guaranteed to miss the mark in every interaction 75% of the time.
Yeah, that is so important, really important. And you learned all this over time through being in big organizations like Slalom and Gartner and Microsoft. You've been around some of the best, most accomplished people out there, right?
Yeah, yeah. And my clients, I've worked across financial services, insurance, some of the biggest, brightest people, the number of clients I've worked with. The difference for me is that I came in with a background in organizational psychology. So I'm a psychology nerd, like neuroscience nerd.
Yeah.
And so foundationally understanding how people think and behave in a system, that is where I went a non-traditional route. And then I didn't go into HR, I went into sales.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's understanding people and how people perform and why they make the decisions that they do is ultimately understanding that, be able to predict people is a key.
And there's not a salesperson out there who considers themselves a professional who doesn't consider themselves a leader. You need to think of yourself as a leader. You're the leader of your territory, you're the leader of your domain, of whatever you're doing, whether it's a niche or an industry or something, because it directly applies. And being self aware is so hugely important in sales. And also the whole piece that you and I share about around mindset. It's just, you've just got to learn more about it if you're not knowledgeable about how your mind can help you succeed or fail. And this book is an incredible way to dive into that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to me. We talked about measuring what matters. And we know that one of the biggest drivers of someone's success is what motivates them. But we don't measure that. And that's what we do in the program, right? Like we're figuring out exactly what it is that person needs the win. What do I need? most of them have never even thought about thinking about what they need. They'll say, I'm dissatisfied, or I joke about this. People will be like, I'm just not happy where I am in my career, and I'm not this, and this job, this. I go, okay, got it. What would satisfaction be? They have
Hmm.
no idea. And
That's
so
that's your
they,
starting point then.
they have no idea. And I'm like, you do realize that saying you're dissatisfied or you haven't hit or achieved whatever success that you think, highlight real success, this idea where you're supposed to be versus where you are. You're not satisfied, but you haven't actually identified that. So that's one of the things that's key when we think about peak performance, we think about sales, we think about productivity, is really helping each individual we're coaching to get clear on what satisfaction is and where they want to go and what that direction is. And when they get clear on it, then because you can have the best manager leader in the world, that is trying to help you, but if you don't know where you want to go, they could put all this effort in and you're still missing the mark. So it's that self leadership.
Yeah.
What's the self? There's no career fairy or whoever that's going to come down and be like, here you go. And chances are, if something is handed to you like that, you're going to maybe it's an opportunity and maybe you learn something, but really getting clear on what you want, what you don't want for you, not what everybody else appears to be doing, right? Like whatever you think you're supposed to do because everybody else has told you.
Right. And even if, let's say you're dissatisfied and maybe someone comes along to recruit you to do something else, that isn't necessarily the best place for you. The grass isn't always greener, also, but you may want to noodle more on what you're saying is what do you really need? What do you really want? What should your next role look like? And how will you feel when you're doing that? Because I think sometimes people just jump to the next thing thinking that's going to solve their problems, and it most certainly doesn't in many cases.
Yeah. If I was to say, I literally, what's today, Wednesday? I've already had conversations with at least 4 people this week who have come to me saying, these are high performers, people that are like, hey, I'm curious. Can you help me? Can you coach me? I'm unhappy with where I'm at. Over and over again, what I hear is people saying, I'm like, why are you not happy? And they're saying, well, I'm not getting the development. I'm not getting the coaching. I'm not getting the mentorship that I want. And this is when we think about this leadership gap of where leaders today, and it's not across the board, but it's pretty consistent of what organizations the leaders want and they think that their employees need and what the employees actually need and what they want. And they are so thirsty for development and coaching and feel like they feel like they matter.
Yeah.
Like and where I see is so many organizations are just spending on all this stuff that they want to make it look like they care about their employees.
Yeah.
Instead of actually investing in how to develop their employees.
Or it's Q4 and they want to cut expenses to end better at the end of the year. And so they're cutting training and coaching in some of the companies I know.
And again, I've also have been pretty adamant with people and saying, if you sit around waiting for your company to invest in you,
Right.
you have to take personal accountability for the direction you want to go. So
Yeah.
this is where I have a lot of high performers, people who are ambitious, who go outside, hire me, go through a curriculum, go through a training and coaching that is going to help them achieve the success they need to because their company isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
It's the
True.
same thing. I did it. And I was working in organizations that had lots of investment and training, but I wasn't getting what I needed.
Yeah.
I went out and I invested in my own self and my own learning and my own training and my own coaching to be able to do what I do now.
Yeah. Yeah. You did it. You saw the need and you did it yourself. And I did the same. I guess I just wish more companies had the forethought to think
Yeah.
about how it could impact their sellers and their leaders.
Yeah. And I think part of it is, again, where is money being spent?
Yeah.
And for most organizations, it's being spent on making it look a certain way instead of really actually how do we build
Right.
an environment that is, and so many people are also caught up in that. So it's not just on the system basis of an organization, it's also the individuals.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I hope that everyone can pick up your book. It's called Moneyball Leadership: Win the Game by Changing the Way You Lead. Any final thoughts before we tell people where they can get it?
No, I think book is intended to be a book to not, like I said, not give you the how to, but who do you want to become, and really think about how you think about your career and the direction you want to be in, and how you can take personal accountability and responsibility for the direction you go in, and that self leadership, right? And how do you find your winning formula that's there? And just by helping you to rethink how you're thinking about what success is and how to achieve it. Yeah, I hope people take a
We get it on Amazon.
you can get it on Amazon. It is now on Amazon. And
Okay.
yeah, if you get it, like I'd love to hear what resonated and yeah, get your feedback.
So buy the book and then reach out and connect to Jamie on LinkedIn. Would that be the
Yeah,
best?
LinkedIn's perfect.
Fantastic. Jaime Diglio, founder and CEO of In First Consulting. Thank you so much. And I sure appreciate your new book. I'm going to be sending it to a number of people I know.
Awesome. Thanks, Lori.